She doesn't walk into Cincinnati as the same Alex Eala who arrived here a year ago. She walks in carrying something far more dangerous: expectations. At just 21 years old, Alex Eala is entering the 2026 Cincinnati Open as the 17th seed, the highest seeding of her career at a WTA 1000 event. And thousands of miles away, Filipino fans are watching closely, because the question is no longer whether Alex belongs on this stage. That question has already been answered. Now the question is much bigger. How far can she actually go? Her path begins with a dangerous obstacle, either Elena-Gabriela Ruse or Magda Linette. On paper, it looks like an early round match. But for Eala, this is effectively her first real test of the tournament. And that makes this match far more important than the draw sheet suggests, because one victory could open the door to a Cincinnati run filled with some of the biggest names in women's tennis. One loss could end the entire story before it even begins. So let's look at exactly what Alex is walking into, why her 17th seed matters, who could stand across the net, and why this seemingly ordinary opening match could define the next chapter of her extraordinary 2026 season. To understand the pressure surrounding Alex right now, you have to understand what happened before she reached Cincinnati. This is not the player who was fighting simply to establish herself on the WTA Tour. This is a player who has transformed her entire position in the sport in a matter of months. At Wimbledon, Alex reached the fourth round, the best Grand Slam result of her career. Then came Washington. She entered the tournament and did something historic. Alex Eala won her first WTA Tour singles title, becoming the first Filipino player in history to win a tour-level singles trophy. But even that achievement doesn't fully explain the magnitude of what happened. In the final, Eala came back from a set down to defeat world number 3 Jessica Pegula. Think about that for a moment. A player who had spent the previous year climbing through the rankings suddenly found herself defeating one of the best players in the world in a WTA final. And she wasn't finished. That Washington triumph created a 7-match winning streak, sending her directly into Toronto with momentum that had become impossible to ignore. Then something remarkable happened. Filipino supporters filled the stands in Toronto, creating an atmosphere so loud and passionate that the supporters were jokingly referred to as Barangay Toronto. Alex continued winning. She reached the round of 16 before Belinda Bencic finally stopped the streak. But here's the important part. The loss didn't erase what came before it. Instead, Eala left Toronto with another deep WTA 1000 run and a season that had already established her as a genuine threat. And now Cincinnati is giving her something she has never had at this level before: a 17th seed. That number isn't just decoration beside her name. It changes the entire structure of her tournament, because the top 32 seeds at a WTA 1000 event receive a first-round bye. That means while many players are already fighting simply to survive their opening match, Alex gets additional time. Time to recover, time to prepare, time to study her opponent. And perhaps most importantly, time to allow a body that has endured Wimbledon, Washington and Toronto to recover before the serious battle begins. But here's where the Cincinnati story gets interesting. Alex doesn't yet know exactly who she'll face. She is waiting for the winner between Romania's Elena-Gabriela Ruse and Poland's Magda Linette. And neither player should be dismissed. In fact, their records against Alex make this opening challenge much more complicated than the 17th seed might suggest. Against Ruse, Alex has a 0-1 record. Their only meeting came in the 2024 US Open qualifying rounds, and it was a match filled with momentum swings. Eala took the opening set 6-3. Then everything changed. Ruse responded with a 6-1 second set before taking the deciding set 6-4. That match revealed something important about the Romanian. She can survive momentum changes. She can stay in uncomfortable matches. And she has shown that she can make life difficult for players who are expected to win. Her game is built around physical exchanges, changing the rhythm of rallies and taking advantage when an opponent begins to lose control. So if Ruse emerges from Thursday's match, Eala could be walking into a battle of patience and endurance. But then there is Magda Linette. And this matchup has a completely different story. The career head-to-head is level at 2-2. Yet the recent trend strongly favors Alex. Eala has beaten Linette in both of their most recent meetings this season. She defeated her in the Auckland quarterfinal. Then she did it again at the Miami Open in the round of 32. That gives Alex something valuable: recent evidence that her game can successfully disrupt Linette's patterns. But there is a warning hidden inside that statistic. Linette is a veteran. She knows how to compete against elite opposition, and she has already shown this year that she can defeat highly ranked players when her level rises. So assuming history will simply repeat itself would be dangerous. And that brings us to the first major question of Cincinnati. Which opponent would Alex rather face? On paper, Linette has the higher ranking, sitting at world number 68 compared with Ruse at number 77. But rankings don't tell the whole story. Linette brings experience and unpredictability. Ruse brings physicality, flat hitting, and the ability to disrupt rhythm. Either one creates a different tactical puzzle, and Alex will have to solve that puzzle quickly. because this is where Cincinnati could expose whether the confidence she developed in Washington is now permanent. Not temporary. Not tournament-specific. Permanent. If Ruse advances, Alex will need to be aggressive from the beginning. She cannot allow the Romanian to settle into long rallies and dictate the physical rhythm of the match. The return becomes critical. Alex will need to pressure the serve early, step forward and avoid allowing Ruse to turn every point into a long-endurance contest. Because if the match becomes another three-set battle, the memory of their 2024 meeting becomes impossible to ignore. But if Lynette advances, the tactical picture changes. Alex's recent success against her provides confidence, but confidence can become complacency, and that would be a mistake. Lynette's level can change dramatically. One day she can look vulnerable. The next, she can suddenly become extremely difficult to break down. Alex therefore has to trust her own game, rather than simply trusting the head-to-head record. Take the ball early. Use the forehand to control exchanges. Change direction. Bring in the drop shot when the opportunity appears. And most importantly, dictate rather than react. Because there is something different about Alex Eala now. She has already shown that she can change a match while it is happening. We saw it in Washington. She lost the first set to Pegula. Many players would have started protecting themselves. Alex did the opposite. She adjusted. She increased the pressure. She found different patterns. And eventually she turned the match around and lifted the biggest trophy of her career. That ability to make mid-match adjustments could become one of the most important weapons in Cincinnati. Because the hardcourts at the Lindner Family Tennis Center tend to reward players who take the ball early and control the tempo. And that fits Alex's developing style extremely well. Her flat, aggressive forehand allows her to take time away from opponents. Her serve has become a more dangerous weapon, and her willingness to step inside the baseline means she doesn't have to spend entire rallies defending from deep behind the court. But Cincinnati is not only about technique. There is another battle taking place. The battle between what happened in Toronto and what happens next. Alex's 7-match winning streak ended against Bensic. That defeat could have become a mental weight. Instead, the goal is to use it as information. Toronto showed her what happens when an opponent successfully takes control. Cincinnati gives her the opportunity to respond. And that is where the extra rest from her first round becomes so important. She has been playing tournament after tournament. Wimbledon, Washington, Toronto, now Cincinnati. That is an enormous physical and emotional workload. The bye doesn't guarantee victory, but it gives her something extremely valuable: preparation. Her opponent will have already experienced competitive pressure in Cincinnati. Alex can watch, analyze, study, and wait. And sometimes, that is an advantage that doesn't appear anywhere in the statistics. But here's where the stakes suddenly become much bigger. Because Alex isn't playing simply for one victory. She is playing to enter a section of the draw that could become absolutely fascinating. If she defeats Ruse or Lynette, the projected next challenge could be 9th-seeded Amanda Anisimova. That would mean another major test against a powerful American player, with the added atmosphere of playing in Ohio. And if Alex somehow gets through that, the draw becomes even more dramatic. A possible 4th-round meeting with 6th-seeded Linda Noskova could await. Noskova is the reigning Wimbledon champion and would represent another enormous challenge. And beyond that sits the possibility of a quarterfinal against someone Alex knows extremely well. Jessica Pegula. Yes, the same Jessica Pegula Alex defeated in that unforgettable Washington final. Imagine the storyline. Alex defeats Pegula in Washington, then continues through Cincinnati, and potentially meets her again with a place in the semifinals on the line. That is the kind of storyline that turns a tournament into something much bigger than a tournament. But there is another major name lurking in that section of the draw. Defending Cincinnati champion Iga Swiatek is also part of the wider picture. And that tells you everything about the challenge ahead. Every victory Alex earns from this point forward could place her directly against another established WTA star. Which is why this first match matters so much. The names later in the draw may be glamorous. The quarterfinal possibilities may be exciting. The potential rematch with Pegula may capture everyone's imagination. But none of that matters if Alex cannot get through the first gate. And that gate is Ruse or Lynette. This is the match that starts everything. There is also the question of Cincinnati's playing conditions. The hardcourts reward players who take control early. That can favor Alex. She has increasingly demonstrated that she is comfortable stepping forward, taking the ball early and using her forehand to dictate. Her improvement in serving also gives her another way to control matches without having to constantly win long rallies. And perhaps most importantly, she now has proof that she can handle pressure. Washington gave her that proof. Wimbledon gave her belief. Toronto gave her another lesson. Cincinnati now gives her a new test. And this is where the prediction becomes difficult. If the opponent is Lynette, Alex has the recent head-to-head advantage. If it is Ruse, the history favors the Romanian. Alex has the rest advantage. She has the ranking advantage. She has the momentum of an incredible 2026 season. But tennis doesn't care about momentum. It doesn't care about rankings. It doesn't care about the storyline. When the first ball is served, everything has to be earned again. That is why this should not be described as an easy opening match. It isn't. Both potential opponents have enough experience and enough weapons to punish an unfocused seed. But when all the pieces are placed together, the prediction still leans toward Alex Eala advancing. Not because the victory is guaranteed. It isn't. Not because her opponent is weak. Neither one is. But because the version of Alex entering Cincinnati is far more experienced, more confident and more battle-tested than the player who lost to Ruse back in 2024. She has beaten top-ranked opponents. She has won a WTA title. She has reached the 4th round of a Grand Slam. She has climbed to a career-high ranking of world number 20. And she has now been trusted with the 17th seed at a WTA 1000 tournament. That is not a lucky break. That is the result of months of work. So when Alex walks onto the Cincinnati court, she isn't simply trying to win another match. She's trying to prove that the breakthrough is real. That Washington wasn't a one-week miracle. That Wimbledon wasn't an isolated run. That Toronto wasn't simply the product of momentum. This is the next test. And if she passes it, the possibilities become enormous. Another round, another opponent, another chance to face a name that once seemed impossibly far away. That is what makes Alex Eala's 2026 season so compelling. Every week, the ceiling moves higher. Every tournament, the expectations become larger. And every victory forces the tennis world to reconsider just how far this Filipino trailblazer can actually go. Cincinnati begins with one opponent, but the story could end with many more. Ruse, Linette, Anisimova, Noskova, perhaps Pegula. Perhaps even deeper into the draw. But before any of those names can become reality, Alex has one job. Walk onto the court, take control, stay aggressive, stay composed, and finish what she started. Because the road to the US Open is no longer about asking whether Alex Eala belongs among the world's best. That chapter is already over. Now comes the more exciting question. How far can she take this? And if Cincinnati becomes the next breakthrough, then by the time Alex reaches Flushing Meadows, the entire tennis world may be looking at the same player the Philippines has been believing in all along. A player whose story is still being written. One match at a time. One city at a time. And perhaps in Cincinnati, one more piece of history is waiting to be made.